Sonic Underground Episode 6, Mobo-Do. That's a very silly name. It doesn't tell you anything. Sonic's mom speaks really happily and says that Manic might find a home that could mark the end of the Sonic Underground. Which doesn't sound nearly as good as Freedom Fighters. I mean, sure, Freedom Fighters sounds more generic, but Sonic Underground is a very obvious title drop, and it's arrogant of Sonic. I always took it literally, like they were underground. And them having an underground hideout would have kind of made more sense than them wandering around outside all day. It would be lucky of them to have an underground hideout, of course. But, like, they could get sick wandering outside all day in the rain. Manic and the heroes are going to a place that the Oracle said they were born in. They're going there because they heard a supposed fairy tale that every so often when the moon's on the right phase, a town shows up. Why would Sonia ever doubt that? In a fantasy world with magical oracles and Sonic and medallions in it. Why would she ever assume that's a fairy tale? Wouldn't the existence of the town be very common knowledge? Like a wonder of the world? And they're going there just in case their mother is there. Sonia complains about all the dirty trees, and Sonic gladly spin dashes the trees apart, but I guess here it's justified because the trees are dead. I had assumed that the trees were killed because of a sickness from Robotnik, or he polluted the forests. I don't think that's ever clearly established. Sonic says that he noticed something strange about a twisted tree, and for some reason no one realizes that it has a weird monster face that's blatantly obvious until after Sonia's grabbed by it. At least when Sonia's kidnapped, it's only for a few seconds, so I don't really feel like it counts as her being kidnapped as being a huge burden. Well, with Tails, it often takes a while for him to be rescued. Sonic plays the guitar, and Sonia twists the tree's branches around each other to escape on her own. So was she able to do that because of Sonic playing the guitar? And Manic plays the drum to make the tree fall, and then Sonic uses a guitar to blast away the tree into sleet. This is so much more interesting and satisfying than Adventures of Sonic, with Sonic doing literally everything effortlessly. Because there's a wider variety of what's happening, and it's not just one person doing everything. So I guess the monster tree was actually Dingo and not a monster tree that was here native to the region all along. Oh well. But yeah, that was really stupid of the heroes to not notice the monster face and just walk right past the tree. Why didn't Sonic cut down that tree like he did to the others? And that would have been a grisly end for Dingo. You think one of those days that would happen to him, with him transforming into inanimate objects? The bounty hunters chase the heroes, and Sonic runs away with his friends. The villains crash into something that Sleep briefly mistakes for Alina and apologizes to, even though it's clearly a gold statue, so he looked stupid there. Is he colorblind? At least he showed human decency, because he even wanted to say "excuse me ma'am" in the first place. Well, why would he ever want to go after the heroes? I mean, he is a slave to Robotnik, so I guess he doesn't have any sort of a choice. But he seems to like chasing after the heroes. And yet this ridiculous cartoon villain would say "excuse me ma'am" to someone he ran into. Huh? He rides a dingo that's been transformed into a motorbike. And Sonic and the heroes walk around a marketplace with white walls. It does make sense that he would ride on a motorbike person, because maybe it saves him a lot on materials. Because he doesn't have to buy a bike, he can just transform into it. It's genius. Manic tries to eat a green apple without paying. Sonia says that he might get them thrown out. That would indeed suck, but it would be actual consequences to his thieving for once in the history of the universe. And a warm-hearted woman says that they don't use money in Mobodoon. That is completely impossible. There's no words to describe how stupid that is. An economy without money, why would anybody work? Manic is confused that the woman knows the names of all three heroes already. It kinda creeped me out, in fact. I'm suspicious of this woman. She's the mayor of the city, and she's glad that Manic is finally back where he belongs. Well, I guess it's progressive that it's a female mayor, but it doesn't have to be. She leads them to their Power Stone, which is totally not the Master Emerald, even though it looks just like one. She guides Manic to a white palace where supposedly he was born, and he shows depths because he's blown away and needs to sit down. It's always nice to see this from a criminal. He cries and says that he wishes he had one place where he truly belonged. He does already, because he has a family now. Shouldn't he realize that and not even have this conflict? And Sonia goes into a spin to send a tornado at a bounty hunter that was apparently there, when I thought she was just spinning to dry herself off. Wouldn't this town have, like, walls around it to prevent just about anybody from wandering into it? Although if that was the case, why would Sonic be able to go in there so easily in the first place, I guess? Fortunately, they find Manic immediately because he pulls him into their old childhood bedroom. So that saves us a bunch of panic. Wait, how is this the place where they were born and not a hospital? That's very primitive, especially for a queen. What queen would give birth in a bedroom? This whole plot of Manic wanting to stay in one place instead of fighting Eggman and looking for the mother, it feels a little forced that he'd even want to do this. Though it was foreshadowed because the trainer from the Oracle had to discourage Manic from running away, but that was from insecurity. He didn't learn his lesson. By the way, I've been suspicious of this woman ever since she said there's no money in the town. She seemed too good to be true, just letting Manic have an apple for free. Then we see the bad guys tearing down some trees and riding a vehicle towards the heroes, barging into a town that has not been taken over by Eggman yet. Slate says he's presenting Robotnik's back taxes that have been unpaid since the last time that the town showed up in their world. So it's official, this is a town from another planet, and the Power Stone lets them travel from one to another. So what incentive do they have to travel to Mobius? Especially since Mobius has been taken over by Robotnik. I guess they didn't know that when they came there, but you'd think the Queen would have told them if she showed up here. I mean, it makes sense with Miracle Planet because it's kind of connected to Mobius, and it goes from one planet to the other and then back. Slate impeaches the mayor, as I seriously wonder why this didn't happen earlier and why the town didn't show up on Mobius more often. I mean, I guess it did because Manic said once in a throwaway line that it shows up every time there's a certain phase of the moon. But why though? What's so special about Mobius? The medallions are still drained from their pointless song earlier, having some consequences in balancing them out better. So Sonic has to run away with his siblings because he had been an idiot earlier. Slate wants to loot the village of its valuables, with a robot putting a green gemstone away and Alina's statue being looted. I mean, the town has a lot of charm to it with the white walls and stuff. I just have to wonder if the bad guys could threaten this place so easily instead of the town, the magical jewel that appears every so often, having a tight security system from the Power Stone. Then what took them so long? Why is the town still standing? Manic says that Mobodoon is Mobo-doomed, a terribly stilted line. And the town's name is so bad that I mispronounced it. And the mayor says that soon the town will fade from Mobius forever because the Power Stone's been taken away. Why do you think that's a bad thing? What is your attachment to Mobius? Would the town be better off not being on Mobius because it's been taken over by Robotnik? And you don't want to be roboticized, which I'm surprised you weren't already. And Sonia says she needs to get some supplies, with Manic joking beforehand that she just wants girly stuff, and she actually wants some useful stuff that will be actually used later in the plot. Sonic goes to cut down dead trees. Seeing him do this is so weird after his nature lover personality in Archie. It was really amusing to hear Sleet say,
"Why are we stopped for a puny tree?"
He sees Sonic and tries to have his vehicle ram into fallen trees, which buys Sonic's siblings some time to get to him. Sonic says that Manic has to take all of their medallions. making the plan when it should really be Sonia, since that would give her something more to do as the leader. But no, it's Sonic, because he's the main character of the franchise. I guess it's nice to give him some smart moments, but I just thought it would be Sonia making all the plans. Anyways, he gives Manic their medallions, and there's a joke that Manic might sell them at a pawn shop. And Manic actually jokes that they don't know, and he's not immediately told, "Dude, not funny! That would screw us over hard!" I mean, at least this proves that he does sell stuff for them, explaining where they would get the money to support themselves. Well, I guess it's not clearly established that they don't crash on a stranger's couch all the time. But if everybody's roboticized who's not rich, then they would be able to find a home that isn't inhabited by roboticized people who turn on them. Anyways, Sonia throws down a rope and Sonic taunts Dingo to get him to jump through the roof of the vehicle. He must jump at the roof at a really high speed to crash through the roof like that. And he's surprisingly durable to not be injured after that. And one of his siblings sneaks into a place with a power stone in its vault. Manic taps the power stone and uses a grappling hook to escape, and pulls a rope to get their medallions back so they can use their instruments again. Sleek calls the cool guitar music awful and runs away. It's really dated to see villains react so poorly to rock music, as if they're 80-year-old men. This is definitely a show that was made in the 90s. I mean, these days rap music is all the rage for some weird reason. I would have thought that would have stopped 10 years ago. I guess some people would sympathize with them saying the music is awful, but it's not like they're singing. It's the singing that's the problem with the songs in this show, because it's so mediocre. It's not the guitars. The guitars are perfect.
That awful noise!
The heroes escape, and Sonic puts the Power Stone back where it belonged, as I sincerely wonder why it didn't have a trained guardian protecting it from being stolen so easily. It's a magical gem! Criminals would want to abuse that. The heroes walk away from Manic perfectly calmly without even trying to convince him to come with them for some reason. And I'm sure that Manic will go with them instead of staying in the village. But he takes an eternity to decide to come follow them because his real home has been with the two of them all along. Wasn't that supposed to be obvious? At least he was smart enough to figure this out on his own, but he had no excuse not to have known that in the first place. I thought that was the lesson they learned in the introduction episodes. Like, subtly. Like the harmony thing? That was so pointless since he figured it out by himself. Why waste my time with that? It was just padding. It was sweet that the mayor told them their mother came along and wished them a happy birthday, but it also feels kind of like it's trying too hard to be heartwarming. Because really? She just happened to wander over here? Why? I thought she was spending all of her time with the Oracle. Why would she always be one step ahead of her children when she has no reason at all to be traveling to the places she's traveling to, instead of staying in one place? I can understand her staying with the Oracle because he's a magical bodyguard for her. Well, this town in particular, despite being the place where our kids were born with a statue of her in it and everything, has a shit security system apparently, and she was probably better off staying away from it. Since while it isn't on Mobius most of the time, when it does show up, it can get very easily looted. Still, it is kind of weird that she's not just here as a queen. This episode was about the heroes finding a beautiful town with white walls that supposedly has no money and yet works perfectly fine with no economy. And they don't even try to explain how that works. I think those lines about no money could have been removed from the story and nothing would have been lost. It was nice that the warm, friendly mayor really was a good person and not luring the heroes into a trap. But Manic had a very forced and pointless conflict about wanting to stay in the town that was a complete waste of time because he reasons himself out of it and takes forever to do so to force a heartwarming ending. I mean, wouldn't he have thought that the place that he belonged was the poor part of Robotropolis that he grew up in? Because he had a loving thief father and would have been surrounded by other criminals? It's not like he was a poor kid around middle-class people. I could understand if he wanted to stay here because it's a town with no money and thus he can steal all he wants from the stores and have no consequences to it. Though that would kind of take some fun out of stealing if you're allowed to do it, wouldn't it? He never really goes into why he loves stealing so much. Probably because it'd make him a bad influence for the kiddies who would be listening. Anyways, the bad guys threaten to loot this town and take it over, while it's arbitrarily decided to be on Mobius for no reason. And the big plot hole here is, I really have to question how the bad guys had such an easy time doing this, and yet haven't already completely robbed the town of everything it had yet. There's no way they wouldn't have a security system in place using the magic of the Power Stone to defend themselves. And if the Master Emerald has a guardian, why wouldn't the Power Stone? Why do they go to Mobius at all? I did love the fact that the heroes couldn't use their instruments right away because their medallions were drained and needed to recharge because they had wasted time with a pointless song earlier. It shows consequences. And even the fact that they need to recharge makes sense on 2 levels. In universe, it's probably because the medallions are taking the natural chaos energy, the chi, that's flowing through the world, and that's how they recharge. They take the natural magic and focus it like a wand for people to use. I heard that was how druids and paladins and fairy types work in fantasy. And for meta sense, they recharge like how Silver's meter in 06 fills back up if you don't use his powers for a while. This happens to make things more balanced instead of overpowered, giving the hero something to struggle with more to compensate for their having magical instruments. I always like seeing them use magic with those instruments. It's just more creative and interesting of a way to fight the bad guys. The episode's premise was another time, the second time in a row, where the heroes go to a place purely for the sake of trying to reunite with their mother. I'm glad the bad guys showed up in the town then to make things more interesting, because there was a villainous plot where they tried to take it over. But still, it just makes their mother look like an idiot, because instead of her kids doing anything at all to try to cripple Robotnik's reign, instead, they're wasting all their time trying to hunt her down because she won't spend any time with them. It's like the entire show is a message against neglecting your kids. I'm not sure what they could do exactly to cripple Robotnik's reign that they would agree to do, because destroying his factories would risk hurting the innocent people who work there. Unless Sonic took them out of the factories beforehand, that could work, but it would still hurt the economy. And they could also destroy his military stuff. But that military could potentially include innocent civilians. And maybe the bounty hunters would kind of count as the military because that's what he's using to fight his worst enemies. And they're too terrified and self-righteous to kill the bounty hunters. Plus, couldn't he just hire more of them? It goes to show you how much trouble the freedom fighters would save themselves by just killing their enemies instead of trying to destroy everything but Robotnik that he could just rebuild anyways. These guys aren't even doing that. At least Sadie M had an episode where they destroyed electricity generators, even if it had no consequences and was entirely worthless as a result. You'd think the Oracle and the person who trained them would stick around to provide them with actual guidance on what to do to take down Robotnik. And because they don't, they just look like massive idiots because the heroes are wasting all their time looking for a mother who claims she loves her kids and is avoiding them at all costs without telling them why. It's pretty silly. These are the worst freedom fighters ever. They aren't doing anything. It's not that I don't like watching the episodes of the show for the first time, of course. Manic and Sonia have so much more character to them than Rotor and Bunny and Nicole do in Sad AM. And the show is underrated rather than overrated, and thus a disappointment. It's just hard to resist questioning the premise of the show when it's silly and justifies plots that end up being pointless, making the characters all look like idiots.